Hello to all those listening today. I am David Dew-Veal, the CEO and founder of Open Road Access, or AURA for short. We are an accessible transport company. Our vision is a world where everyone can move freely and independently. And crucially, we're building towards that today, starting with accessible car rentals. And we're working with some amazing partners, such as the Spinal Injuries Association, where Simon is from, who I'm going to be speaking to today. I suppose final point I would say on Aura is that it was founded based on my own personal experience and my family's experience of how brilliant it was, freedom that access to an accessible vehicle gave us. What we are about is providing flexible, convenient, simple access to transport for people to use as and when they need it. So yeah, as I said, that's Aura, but that's enough about me today. I'm thrilled to have Simon Pinnell from Spinal Injuries Association join me for this conversation. So Simon, if you could share a little bit more about yourself and the work you do with SIA.
Yeah, thanks, David. As you say, I'm Simon Pinnell. I'm the Business and Enterprise Manager at the Spinal Injuries Association. I've worked there since, where are we now? 2014. So just about 11 years. I've had, this is my third different role at the organisation. I started off managing our support network team across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. All of them are spinal cord injured, and that's where our major focus of our work is supporting those with a spinal cord injury or those affected by spinal cord injury. And that's obviously not just the individual themselves, that's their friends, their family, their colleagues, their wider field of contact, that sort of thing. And that support comes from pretty much the day that they're injured or that they sustain their spinal cord injury, right the way through, as much or as little as they want in terms of support for us. So, as I say, all of our support network team are all spinal cord injury. They've all got lived experience of that. Indeed, probably about 50% of our workforce, about 80, have got a spinal cord injury. So we're a pretty inclusive organisation. So if you want some advice on wheelchairs, we've got a good range of them in the office. If it actually becomes quite fun trying to negotiate around the office when we're all in. I then moved on to manage our advocacy team, which was our support line, and also working with those predominantly getting continuing healthcare funding from the NHS, ensuring eligibility, etc. And then about 18 months ago, we established our business and enterprise team, and I got the role as managing that. And our focus was initially with our established partnerships in terms of social enterprises. We have 2 or 3 of those. But one of the big areas that myself and the rest of the team are moving into this year and started towards the end of last year is product promotion partnerships. And that's where we've teamed up with Aura, which we're absolutely delighted about.
Thanks for that, Simon. Yeah, there's several points in there that'd be really great to come back to. But that last one you raised around the partnership that we have just made between our 2 organisations. I suppose from your perspective and from your organisation's perspective, could you tell us a little bit more about that partnership and the impact that you and we hope it will have on your members?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we look to establish relationships and product partnerships with companies who provide a service or goods or something like that that will be beneficial to our members, that we obviously do due diligence on. We make sure that it's an established company. We make sure that they're reputable, all of that sort of thing that you would expect somebody to do. But then if our members come through us to look to that company, they know that it's not just some fly-by-night company that's set up in the backyard or somewhere in the back of Beyond. But so they can take comfort from that fact. But also through the partnership that we've established, we've managed to secure a small discount for our members, but also then a kickback to the organisation. And for us, that's great because we get no government funding at all. All of our income, all of our £3-4 million income per annum has to be raised, and we kind of start with a blank piece of paper and a blank purse, if you like, at the start of each financial year. So anything that we we can raise and that's sustainable, that we can identify, is great. So and that's where we see the partnership coming in and working really, really well. It's come at a really good time for us because we're currently working on a project called Travel with Confidence, and that's around public transport. That's around people getting around generally, and because having that independence to travel is key for somebody with any sort of disability. It can feel very well. We all went through lockdown and COVID, and we all knew how maddening it was to be stuck indoors and not being able to go anywhere. For people with a spinal cord injury, that can be the day-to-day reality. And somebody like Aura or any of the other transport that we're working with gives people that independence and that getting closer to what perhaps they were used to, or what the rest of the world will consider normality.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree in terms of it's not so much about the transport, the mode itself, although being a bit of a transport nerd, I can get excited about that. Actually, what matters here is what it allows people to connect to and
Absolutely.
connect with. And there's a huge amount of work and research that has been done, some that myself and colleagues have been involved with around the wider socio-economic benefits that having access to transport provides for people, be that social, education, healthcare, and everything in the middle. And your analogy of being, in lockdown, I think is a really powerful thing that I imagine a lot of people would connect with, and can connect with. And also your point on the partnership around the revenue generation opportunity for SIA, and I think that's really important for us because it's we know it's a challenging funding environment for charities, and obviously that's amplified by cost increases across society that we've seen. So I think for us having a partnership like this where we can provide the best value service to our end customers, but also provide an additional revenue stream for charities is really, really important. It's a win-win-win is how
Yes.
we like to look at it. How's it going for you in your role, looking at kind of the commercial partnership side of things and building these sorts of relationships?
It's going really, really well. We've got such a wide scope of new partnerships that we're bringing on board, from experience days, a very different type of driving, sort of track days and stuff like that. So not the stuff that your vehicles will be involved in. You'll be delighted to hear. Clothing. What else have we got in the pipeline at the moment? Home adaptations. So whether that's bathrooms, accessible bathrooms and wet rooms, but some of the electronics that go for those with a higher level of spinal cord injury. I'm relatively fortunate in that I'm a paraplegic, so I have full function of my hands and arms. But there are those who have tetraplegia, which means all four of their limbs will be impaired. There's voice control activations for things like doors, windows, all of that sort of stuff, and that means that tech's got to be installed. So that's just one of the other companies that we're working with.
Brilliant. I mean, yeah, the amount of technology and the development in technology that we're seeing is there's that again. It's another area that we find really exciting here around these kind of challenges and blockers around accessibility that have been intractable for so many years. Actually, now we've got new technology coming through. How can we use that and how can we apply that? So, yeah, I mean, it's great to hear that and no surprise that there are lots of organisations that are really benefiting from partnering with you and therefore passing that benefit on to your members. So yeah, great. I think you touched on a couple of times as well the point around lived experience. You've got a large number of people with lived experience in your team.
Mm.
For those without lived experience listening to this podcast or tuning into this podcast, could you share what life looks like after a spinal cord injury? And I know that's going to be a broad range of things based
Yeah.
on everything
I
you
mean,
said.
if I kind of base it on my experience, some people have said, it's almost like having two jobs. So I work full time, but I also have the job of managing myself and my spinal cord injury. And there's kind of the unseen stuff there. One of the things is it takes me probably 3 times as long to get up and get dressed in the morning as it ever used to. None of this, well, I need to be out of the house at 1:30. So if I really rush, I can set the alarm for 1:15, fall out of bed, throw a few clothes on, splash some water on my face, and I'm out the door. That doesn't happen anymore. there's the unseen things that have to be managed with a spinal cord injury, and the main things I'm thinking out about a bowel, bladder, and skin. So they all have to be managed, and that's done in various different ways that you can do that. And that's not for this podcast, but that's just something to be considered. Um, my other half says, it's great going out or living with me. She said, because you take twice as long to get ready as I do. So it's true. If I want to get up and, just the simple act of getting dressed and putting trousers on means, rolling around on the bed to pull them up and that sort of thing. So it is about planning. It's about taking, allowing the time to do things that you realise aren't going to be as quick as they perhaps used to be, and that's the unseen side of it. The wheelchair and moving around in a wheelchair is a very visible side of it, but it's the unseen stuff, if you like, that's often not appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I've almost got it's the old analogy of an iceberg, and the vast majority
Yeah.
sitting below the surface,
Yes.
and um, the kind of additional barriers that places, I suppose. But yeah, I loved the example with your partner, making I suppose making it work for her, and
Yeah, it's fine.
making that humor out of it. And I suppose humor is one way of kind of managing challenging situations, isn't it? And I think another way is probably community, which I
Yes.
know is really strong within the SIA and the network. So yeah, could you talk a bit more about the role of community and how that plays into things?
Yeah, it's when you sustain a spinal cord injury, you become almost a member of a club, and there is, in fact, on various social media platforms, there are closed user groups that refer to it as SCI Owners Club, almost as if it's like owning an MG or a Rolls Royce or something like that. Probably sometimes it feels a bit more like a Lada or a Trabant, but um, so and it's one of those communities that people are very, very supportive and very willing and happy to share ideas, experience, knowledge, and what works for you won't necessarily work for the next person. So that's where that community aspect comes in, because you can ask a question and there's kind of no taboo subjects that you can't ask anybody with a spinal cord injury. How do you manage your bowels? How do you get dressed? Where's the best place to go, on holiday? How do you find, you'll get people that are perhaps living in Manchester that are coming down to London for the weekend. How accessible is London or the London area? Um, so all that sort of thing, and the sharing of that knowledge, either on social media or from an SIA's perspective. I touched on our support network team earlier in the podcast, and each of those holds a number of community groups, which is an opportunity for people in a particular local area to come together with a spinal cord injury. For many people, that's their first experience of socializing or even getting out of the house once they've been discharged from hospital or from a rehabilitation centre of some description, where very often they will have been for a period of weeks, if not months. So to suddenly find that they're not the only person with a spinal cord injury in the area is a massive weight off their shoulders. And that's where the importance of those sorts of community aspects come in, sharing stories, getting ideas as to what you can do with your time if you don't go back to employment, or you're between jobs or whatever, you're waiting to go back to work. Some people don't want to go back to work, and that's there's no right or wrong on that. But that feeling of community, that you are not on your own, is massive, and it's a great amount of support. I've still got friends that I'm in contact with from when I did my own rehabilitation, and we still share stories. And if you go somewhere, you think, oh, if you're going to so and so, there's a brilliant restaurant, really accessible, great toilet facilities, all of that sort of stuff, and the staff are very helpful. So it's always a case of sharing that knowledge.
Yeah, really powerful. You mentioned Facebook groups as well, and social media as being a really key tool for creating community and getting the message out there. How do people hear about you? How do people join the community?
Well, if somebody is, I mean, we've got obviously the first place to come to is our website, which is spinal.co.uk. a whole host of information and how you can join and be a member there. But if somebody has recently sustained their spinal cord injury, all of our support network coordinators and the volunteers that work with them will go into the 8 English and the Welsh and Northern Irish spinal cord injuries rehabilitation centres.
Mm,
So they spread from Middlesbrough down to where I was, Salisbury, I think is the most southerly one.
mm,
Um, so they'll be in there regularly, but they also have relationships and presence at the major trauma centres where somebody might go before they're admitted into a spinal centre because there's a waiting list, there's a limited number of beds, all of that sort of stuff. Um, People Google spinal injury, and we're one of the top things that comes up on that list there as well. Um, so there's a whole variety of ways in which people can come across us. But things like this, anything that we can do to broaden the knowledge or the fact that we exist and make people aware is always useful.
absolutely. Absolutely. And anything we can do to support with that, we're more than happy to, definitely. Can you just stick with this point on community just for a little bit longer? And I wonder if there are any specific stories, you alluded to a couple, specific stories that come to mind when thinking about the impact of community and SIA.
I think, yeah, I mean, as you say, I alluded to a couple of them. For some people, it's that eye-opening moment that they realise they are not going to be staring at the four walls of their living room for the rest of their life, that they can get out. Some of the things that the knowledge that I've shared with people when I've gone into the spinal centres, some of them are actually amazed that you can drive again. Just that, having that amount of independence. People, we see the Paralympian stories and all of that sort of stuff, and some of those and they're fantastic stories, but it's the day-to-day regular normality that I think strikes me as more of a real watershed moment for people that we've worked with. We've had people that we've supported that I've just finally got my first Motability car or whatever it is, or and I've been able to drive. I've driven myself to Tesco for the first time since my injury.
Uh,
Something as mundane as that for some people is a massive mountain to overcome.
uh,
Um, it's been able to get them involved in sport, in doing other things in the community, volunteering, um, go on holiday. People have said, "Oh, I've just come back from, I did a weekend away, and I never thought I'd go on holiday again." But being able to find somewhere accessible, and just something as simple as I went away for the weekend,
uh,
people wouldn't, before my injury, I wouldn't have thought twice about it.
uh,
Now, yeah, involves a little bit of pre-planning, making sure you've taken everything with you, or your bowel bladder management stuff that you need to take with you, anything else, preparation wise, all of that sort of stuff. And I don't travel light, but just for somebody just to be away for the weekend is brilliant.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really resonated. I think if I were to summarize, I think normal is underrated.
Yes.
And I think one really appreciates normal when one doesn't have normal.
Yeah.
And moving back to that point. And yeah, I again leaning into the transport a point you made around being able to get out and go on holiday or get out, go and see friends. I mean, that, as I mentioned at the start, Aura came about because my family had a Motability wheelchair accessible vehicle growing up, and it was literally, I remember before it and after it, and the after it, things were much easier. It was something that went out from under the iceberg to
Yeah.
kind of the top, because
Yeah.
my brother and I could go to sports, music,
Yeah.
yeah, mates, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I really appreciate that. God, there's loads more I want to ask you, but I'm also conscious of your time as well. So let's think big picture for a moment here, or even bigger picture, I should say. What does a more inclusive future look like for you in transport and beyond?
Okay. Um, in Let's start with transport, and then we'll go beyond that. As transport's obviously the main theme here. For me, I think things like public transport, and whether that's buses, trains, planes, taxis, whatever it might be, it's what would be nirvana, if you like, is being able to turn up and not have a worry that it's not going to work. You know, if somebody without a spinal cord injury or a disability decides, oh, do you know what, I'm going to go into London on the train today. If I go into London on the train, I have to pre-plan that and pre-book the assistance, and I have to work out which of the underground stations I can actually use,
Mm,
and which might not be the nearest one for where I want to get to. So I then have to think, well, okay, how do I get from that station, which is accessible, to this theatre which I want to go to, and which buses do I need to use? Can I get a taxi? Because not all taxis will stop for you, believe it or not.
I
You can
believe it.
try and hail them from the side of the road if they see you in a wheelchair. Um, so that would be my ideal, is from that sort of thing. And to take that a little bit broader into the wider community, being able to go out anywhere and not have to Google Street View it, contact them beforehand. Do you have any steps? Are you accessible? Have you got an accessible toilet? The three kind of things that I always do if I'm going somewhere for the first time, or if I'm going out for a drink, beer, or a meal with friends. I kind of know if I'm going in the local area, I know which of the pubs or restaurants I can get into easily enough. Whereas I might think, yeah, I might be driving along. You're out for a country drive. Oh, that pub looks nice. You pull into the car park, which is full of gravel, which is a nightmare to move across on a wheelchair. I appreciate it's much easier to maintain and doesn't put concrete down. I get all of that. Um, you then get to the door of the pub, you go in through the door and then find that there's another step up into the bar. So, you can't do stuff necessarily ad hoc. That's where I would see it as a more inclusive society.
Yeah, thank you. That was very aspirational, but also very uh, clear, and it feels achievable. It does. I think there's the point you raised around the additional planning needed to find the accessible stations or the accessible taxis, but actually there's a or accessible toilets, all the other points you raised. There's the challenge though of it being accessible but not working,
Yes. Oh,
which
that's a whole different ball game.
yeah. Yeah, exactly
Yeah,
that. And how do we create information that lets people know if something is actually working as it should be, or it isn't as it should be? I think there was another point you raised in there. All the examples you gave were you uh, going to events, going to pubs, spending money within the economy as well, which is something that I know people talk about a lot in terms of the spending power
yes,
of disabled people, and the opportunity for different businesses that are accessible, that have thought about step-free access or accessible toilets, opening up new customer bases and having people coming and visit them.
absolutely. I think it's called the Purple Pound, but
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and there are places that perhaps I've gone to or I've asked about accessibility, and if the response hasn't been particularly welcoming, they
Mm,
certainly haven't got my business. And I've
mm,
made sure that other people know not to try and to take their business as well,
yeah.
because it's not just our pound that they won't get.
Yeah.
I've got a circle of friends, and not all of my friends are spinal cord injured, believe it or not. I have got some inverted commas ordinary friends, and they too will, well, if you can't go there, we won't either. So there is a wider knock on effect that sometimes people don't see.
Well, it links back to that point on community that we were talking
Absolutely,
about a few minutes
yeah,
ago, and the kind of ripple effects of that.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm, as I say, conscious of time here and us drawing to a close. But I think there's probably one final question I will ask, and it's how can people listening to this get involved, support your work, and amplify the message of SIA?
Um, Come and join us. Our membership is not just for those with a spinal cord injury. We also have friends and family, and we look at our partners as friends. Very much that. If anybody from an organisation or a business point of view has anything that they think would be beneficial, contact me. Let me know. Come through the website. You can contact us and find us there. But have a look at your own environment and think. A lot of people will be familiar with pushing a pushchair or a buggy or a pram around. How easy can I do that without having to? That's kind of the closest you'll get to a wheelchair. Is have I? Don't park across drop curbs. Make sure that you don't park on the pavement so that you can get past. but just have a look around at your own environment. Can I get into somewhere without, without having to step up or without having to look or causing trip hazards? Are, is there space around within shops or somewhere like that for somebody in a wheelchair to move around? We don't expect the earth, but we just like to be able to go in and have a look around somewhere. There's a lot of shops. Some of the smaller ones I appreciate a push for space, but you kind of have to maneuver. It's tentative. It's about the speed of an oil tanker on docking that we move around some shops. But just have a look around. That's how, if you don't want to get involved directly, just make sure that those of us who are spinal cord injured and are wheelchair users can make use of your facilities or your place of work or your business.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure that message will resonate. And yeah, really looking forward to sharing this podcast and for people to hearing that. Simon, thank you so much for joining us on this month's episode of the Aura podcast. Really appreciate it. Also, thanks to all the listeners for tuning in. Really appreciate your time as well. If
Been a pleasure.
people enjoyed the episode, don't forget to give us a like, a follow, or a share. Likewise, SIA have an active social media channel, or channels, I should say. So please go and check them out. Yeah, this podcast is all about building community, sharing perspectives, and I suppose the voice of our customers and our community is really central to that. We've got lots more in the works, and yeah, stay tuned for more. But as I said, Simon, thank you so much. Really enjoyed speaking with you today.
Pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Cheers.